All right, so we're rolling. Welcome to the webinar. First of all, I'm so glad you're here. This is an under the umbrella of Forever Fit and Fab After 50 programs that I offer. And this title actually is not quite under contract, but it's being negotiated as a book. So depending on the publisher we end up going with, the timeline is who knows. But the good thing is the research is solid enough, it's respected enough that someone wants to pick it up. So know that's coming. Today it's all about you creating a rich life, happy and hot without the flash. So if you take that little bit of humor, know that I give a little edgy and blunt and in your face, but respectfully, laughing with you, not at you. I am you. So tune in for the end. If you're looking for content you can walk away with and you want a little bit of my time, you should walk away today feeling like you know what mistakes you might have been making unintentionally, and you have a better idea of what you should and could be doing and why what you've done in the past hasn't worked. Stand alone. You should feel better when you leave. If you're looking for more and you're thinking about the possibility of working with me or a coach or a program, stay tuned for the end. We have gone back to regular rate. I don't have any specials on, but for those of you attending, I will do one last chance later today. So, of the 7 areas covered under Forever Fat and Fabulous, or Fit and Fabulous After 50, it's a program called Fat to Fit. Actually, I'm confusing with this. These are the 7 areas. I'm asking you simply to look at, of these areas, the exercise, nutrition, sleep, the stress, the hormones, the rest and recovery, and then a holistic plan. Which of these areas you think you're falling short in? If you are here, my guess is you are here because you're not quite at your goal. You are not 100% satisfied with where you're at, and maybe have a great deal or at least a small amount of frustration with what you've been doing, and you're tired of that roller coaster of up and down and weight loss, or trying to eat good, whether you eat bad or good, feeling like you're not having results. Which of these areas is it that you're trying hardest in and failing most miserably in? Think about that. Here's the top two are exercise and nutrition, where we tend to seek the most control. I hope by the end I point out to you that these are the 2 that probably have the least to do with your success. Typical of women who reach our 50s, we are been running the show but running on empty. Whether the family show, the work and the career show, a little bit of both, maybe suffering from a little chronic conditions. At this point, more people have fibromyalgia, have arthritis, and or just an abundance of stress from different areas of their life, when they're feeling like we should be at the peak. We should have come through that small tube and be more confident, feeling good about our careers and where we are, and a little less stressed. That's not the case. On the other side, when we go to a doctor, all too often, or very recently, I've heard someone say they visited a personal trainer and got this advice, that they were simply getting old. And that's the reason they were gaining weight or weren't making progress. At the end of the sessions, when there were no results, in fact, there were the opposite results that were desired, that was the information they got. We're getting similar, not from all doctors, but from a large percent, unfortunately, of doctors. Prescription is the key. Maybe it's an antidepressant. Maybe it's something for thyroid. Maybe it's blood pressure, cholesterol, and often too soon, maybe before we look at what's the underlying cause. So we're going to start looking at how might there be some natural ways of you getting where you need to go, and making sure that we're fixing the problem, not fixing the symptom that we see. So if these describe you at all, you're eating right, you're exercising, but it's just not working. It's like the rules have suddenly changed and what used to work doesn't work anymore. Things that I never had problems with, I am having problems with now. Cellulite showing up where it never was. You can't exercise like you want to, even if you knew what that was at this point, because you're out of time, or you were in the best shape of your life until you got hurt doing some high intensity exercise, maybe a little too often, and now you're injured, and your next fear is that if you start again, you'll be hurt more. If you've never put yourself first before, it's been family, it's been work, or it's been both, you're feeling time slipping through your fingers. So you know it's not going to get easier. If you've crossed that threshold, there is something magical about the age of 50. I often have people ask, what about programs for 70-year-olds or 60-year-olds? And what I let them know is it doesn't change that much more. After 50, we have this huge threshold because of the additional hormone issues. Even if menopause is a breeze for you, you get to the other side and your hormone balance has changed. And so you may experience weight gain where you didn't really have challenges with sleep or hot flashes or mood. It's a challenging time, and we know it's not going to get easier when we are 60 or we are 70. We don't expect to have more energy when we're 60 than we did when we were 40. In reality, the truth is you could. You might be that person. So if you find yourself saying, I want to do what I want to do for a change, and it's been a long time since you've really done that, and if you know you want to enjoy the next 10, 20, 30 years, we have the ability right now, more than we ever have in history, because of the new research, because of the power of the baby boomer generation and the money that we have to put into the market. You may not feel like you are in the upper echelon of middle class or upper class, and yet we together collectively have more money than any generation before us. What we want, what we say, will change the services available to us. And it's going to change all of the research we see about health and nutrition. We're going to talk a lot today about primarily what's the big fat deal. So why are we storing it so easily? Why is it so hard to blast off of us again when it used to be not so hard if a few pounds crept on to get rid of them? And what about eating fat, and what effect does that have? So, number one, it's complicated. We could just wrap up right here because that's about all you're going to know when the end is up, and that's not true. You're going to know a little bit more. But let's talk about mistakes we've made. What we've always done throughout time is decrease calories, increase exercise. That should do it. You're still going to read those messages. If you are on social media, you're in Facebook or you're on Pinterest, maybe a little bit on Twitter, but you're seeing all the pictures, all the memes, all the quotes. They will suggest to you that you don't have enough discipline, or you don't have enough willpower, or if you just decrease your calories or look at the calories of this compared to that, in exchange of that, you'll lose this many calories. It will still suggest that this is the formula. We know, science knows, and experience knows. If you're a woman who's 50 who's tried this many times over, maybe had it temporarily work, but you're still here on this call, you know it doesn't work long term. What we end up doing when we lose weight like this was lose muscle and lose fat. And for 95% of people, diets fail. So that's either short or long term. For 66% of people who diet, they gain the weight back and then some. The challenge is when we gain weight back, particularly after the age of 50, it's fat weight. We don't gain muscle as easily. It's very difficult to gain muscle. So what we want to do is not lose any muscle that we have right now, and we want to try to shift our hormones so that we can lose the fat instead. This is what we seek. We want control in our potentially out of control lives where we're working so much, we're sleeping so little. We've got family members, younger family members, older. We've got a lot of different stressors in our lives potentially at this point. Even if we feel like, I really don't have that much going on, that doesn't mean from the outside looking in, you don't have stress or experience it. but we seek active control. We seek the things we know we can control, like diet. You can plan that somewhat, and you can exercise. Stress is a little more elusive. Hormones are very elusive. You don't know the effect. Rest and recovery, we're not sure what even that is. Sleep, we tend to, in our society, give each other a pat on the back for sleeping less or for getting by with less sleep. And, burning the candle on both ends gets rewarded when we're discovering now more and more how important sleep is, both for productivity, both for safety. If you're sleep deprived, even for one day, the next day, it's essentially the same as having a blood alcohol level as if you were drunk. That's what studies are showing us now. But it's also related to weight loss. People who sleep more lose weight or maintain it much easier. So, a little quiz, and it's rhetorical. So, you can certainly answer. You can put your answer in the box if you are so possessed. Which hormones slow or prevent weight loss? Cortisol, leptin, adrenaline, thyroid, insulin, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA. Some of those you may be very familiar with, some of those maybe less so. Here's the answer. It depends. In some cases, small amounts of cortisol will help you burn fat. In other cases, in the presence of insulin and a lot of stress, cortisol helps store deep belly fat. That's a problem. The same is true of the sex hormones. We need them there in a balance. If we have too much or too little, it changes things. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about pigeonholing some of those. We'll pick on them. What's the best for fat loss? High intensity intervals of short duration. So let that sit for a minute, just high intensity intervals, short duration, that might be 20 minutes. High intensity, long duration. So that might be 60 minutes or more. Low intensity, long duration, that might be 60 minutes or more, definitely. Which is best for fat loss? It depends. Now, some of you might have said, based on really recent research, and a lot of the things, again, you're going to read in Facebook. It used to be that we'd say, it's dangerous to Google it because you'll get too much information. Now I might say it's dangerous to look on Facebook because every fitness quote unquote expert is posting something, and sometimes they're sharing what someone else posted, and it's not always scientifically accurate. Now, experience also tells the truth. If you're doing something that's working and it's not hurting, there's no negative side effects, I think you have to roll with that. And you have to know that we each have a unique approach, both to diet and to exercise, that works for us. So we can't argue that. And I don't think there's a point in it. There's no right or wrong. We need to find the right for you. So if we can find what's collectively right for a lot of people and what you're doing is not working, my suggestion is to try this route. The answer here is the only one that really doesn't work and that will backfire for you is high intensity, long duration. You want to do either or, but you don't want to do both at the same time. So high intensity, very short intervals. If you're tight on time, a 20 or 30 minute with some interval training makes a lot of sense. Low intensity and long duration also makes a lot of sense, but mixing the two adds to the kind of hormone changes that backfire and work against you, making you store fat. So there comes the it depends. So where do you store your fat? Because this is what's going to determine the best way for you to lose it. So think about it, and unfortunately, we could look at the left-hand column as A, look at the right-hand column as B, and you could also have a C and say both, and I am sorry. But that's sometimes the case. You may have one or the other, though, that tends to be, this is the first place I put it. This has always been my first place I put it. And then I would categorize yourself as this is really where I have it. Because if we can budge that, we can probably budge the other. So let's talk about the difference between them. Visceral belly fat is really the deep belly fat. It's not something you can pinch. It's a firm, kind of an apple shape. You've lost the pear shape and now you have more of a barrel shaped belly. You can't find your waistline anymore. It's very cortisol responsive. That means if you're under a high level of stress, chances that that's where you're depositing fat stores. And from a variety of things. So when we talk fat stores, sometimes in listeners, the alarms go off and you hear me think, or you hear me say, eating fat goes to fat, and it's not that. So please, it could be fat, it could be protein, it could be carbohydrates, and we'll talk about that a little later. But whatever is excess or your body reads as excess, and there's the fault. But if you have stress, things are more likely, more able, and more readily stored as belly fat. You are less insulin sensitive. So in a second, that will be a good thing. It's harder to store in the belly. Your body really has to work to do that, but it's easier to burn. So if you do have that deeper belly fat, you've changed maybe from being a pear shape your whole life to suddenly not really having a waistline and you're more of an apple shape, that's an easier place to take off. Compared to, let's move over to subcutaneous. So this is the pinch and inch. This is the, back of your upper arm, or if you can pinch on your belly or reach down on your thighs and you can literally pinch an inch there. That is insulin sensitive. So we'll come back to what that means. It's easier to store. You tend to store it there really easily. Your body will put it there if there's extra and if there's stress, but it's harder to burn. So if that's where you've started to put it on, it'll be a little bit harder for you to burn through exercise alone. You will have to be a little bit more solid and strict with a diet. You don't have as much wiggle room. Someone who carries more visceral fat, a moderate carbohydrate intake is still okay. You're going to be exercising more because that works really well. You want a little bit more carbohydrate to fuel the energy to put out during exercise. If you have that pinch and inch, it's actually harder to burn through exercise. We still want you moving. We just don't want you overdoing it in an attempt to reach that fat because it's not going to help. And in fact, it's going to make you more cortisol sensitive and you'll store more fat as a result of it. So moderate exercise, but a little bit more strict in diet. And that just means fewer carbohydrates than someone else. It doesn't mean eliminate them. We don't want to eliminate any food groups, really. That's not the goal. And it's not a starvation diet either. It's just a swaying of what kind of food you're going to eat. So let's talk hormones because that's what's affecting where you store this fat and how we blast it off. So let's talk thyroid hormone first. And I want to bring up the very bottom bullet here before we even start. There are a lot of experts that are agreeing now that hypothyroidism, that means the slowing of your thyroid, where you're feeling sluggish, lethargic, not much energy, and maybe be putting on a little bit of weight. A lot of experts agree that that might be a symptom, not a problem. It's something else wasn't working right. And so the thyroid also got slowed down because it got overtaxed and it's overtired. And so these things are happening. So the problem might be in the diet. Maybe you're not getting enough of something. You're not properly fueling. And so we're not getting nutrients like we need them. It might be exercise. Maybe there's too much of it for your body right now. And as I'm talking to you, you might be thinking, well, I'm hardly exercising, but it's still, I feel flat. I feel fatigued. Exercise is hard. It's not fun. You may be surprised to hear this, but as a fitness expert, one of the first things I might suggest if that's you is that you actually go backward and do even less than you're doing now until we can balance out the hormones and have you feeling more energy. because simply making you exercise more. We've always said in the exercise industry, and you might hear this month if you're seeing someone in a health club or you're seeing a fitness professional, they may tell you energy creates energy. And that is true to some extent. But when you have chronic fatigue, if you're just tired, you go to sleep and you sleep 7 or 9 hours a night, but you wake up not feeling rested and you're exercising, but at the end of the exercise, you don't feel really invigorated. You just feel like you got it done. That might be a sign that your adrenal glands and affecting then your thyroid are just fatigued. They are truly burnout, like every 20-year-old will tell you they are. And you may need more rest and just more good nutrition, focusing on bringing you back to good levels and then going up and over. So we're going to look at your stress level and toxic exposure. So when I say toxic exposure, that can be a lot of things. It could be people, and you don't need to hire a hitman. I'm not suggesting that, but looking at, how much time do you spend around people who really drain you of your energy? What about your work? We spend a lot of our working or waking hours at work today. If you don't really like your job, in fact, if you really hate it, that's probably a lot of stress on you that you've settled for, and you've been under some stress for a long period of time. That can add up. If you're sitting in front of a computer 8 to 10 hours a day, that may sound like a lot, but if you're doing it at work and then you go home and have a laptop or an iPad in front of you, that's a lot of screen time. And we're receiving a little bit of radiation from that. That can't be healthy for us. How many of you carry your cell phones constantly? How many of you have them always, on you? Whatever you do, don't carry them in a bra pocket. There's a lot of link lately with carrying your cell phone close to your ear, potentially leading to brain tumors. They're looking at that quite heavily. They're looking at in men who carry their cell phones in their pant pocket at prostate cancer and the link to that. So, if you're wearing it when you run, be conscious of how close to your body it actually is and see if you can remove it as much as possible. But those kinds of toxic exposures we may not think about when we think about weight gain and we think about exercise and diet first. There may be so much more involved that it's really less about the exercise and the diet and nutrition and more about what else is going on that's causing stress and fatigue. So your thyroid is your regulating mechanism. It kind of keeps things flowing. It's linked, though, to your adrenal glands. So if you have adrenal fatigue, you've done that, stress and project and stress over events and the family and stress over holidays and stress, your adrenal glands have gone up and gone up and gone up and gone up. And eventually, they're kind of shot and that spills over into thyroid a lot of times. One isn't doing its job, fatigue or burnout, by the other. So looking at lower levels, generally that's when you have the weight gain. And I'm not even addressing, your higher levels. So that problem we don't hear quite as much about, where you've really got an overactive thyroid and you've got things going on. So that might be happening with you. And I apologize if I'm skipping that piece of it. But since we're addressing more weight loss and we're addressing, and somebody put in here cortisol. So we're getting to that one, definitely. So needed in small amounts. We need it like we need small amounts of cholesterol, but too much cholesterol, not a good thing for us. We need some of it. It does help us burn fat in a certain amount. It's when we cross this certain threshold. So we can exercise up to a point and promote just an adequate enough of cortisol in addition to other present hormones that we need, and that will help us make progress with boosting metabolism, losing fat or burning fat. But if we do too much exercise or too intensely, we will actually promote more cortisol, which halts fat metabolism and tends to have you hold on or lock down on the fat you already have. So you'll burn carbohydrate, which is your immediate source, instead of burning the stored fat that you really want to get to. If cortisol is too high, you have too much for too long, which can happen with stressful jobs, chronic illnesses, yours or somebody else, you're a caregiver for someone, or you just are a caregiver. If you've got a large family and you're it, or you're in a profession, nursing, healthcare, you're a home healthcare person, you're in physical therapy, you doctor other people, those are all professions that tend to have high cortisol levels and stress loads for a long period of time. That tends to trigger adrenaline fatigue, and there we go, tripping the wire again back into thyroid issues and other problems. So you're flat, these are the things when you're sleeping but you're not rested when you wake up. Those are all triggers. What happens when you're under stress, if you have cravings, we don't tend to crave spinach, kale, and carrots. It's a craving for sugar, and cortisol is a big piece of that. So if you're under stress, you notice you're storing belly fat, you crave sugar, and then if you give into that sugar craving, and we can all justify, a little sugar here and there. And it's not that you can't have it. It's just there are certain times when it's probably better and worse for you to have it. If you eat it at the wrong time, there's an increase or a spike in insulin. When insulin is present, all fat metabolism halts temporarily. And that means fat storage is much more likely. So it's cortisol and insulin that are the villains. Cortisol alone is not the bad guy, but cortisol with insulin are the two bullies for belly fat. So here's insulin. We know we need it. We've got to have it. It stops our fat metabolism, encourages storage of food as fat, whatever food it is, it doesn't matter. If you're under stress, then you've got higher cortisol levels. You've got much more of that belly fat storage. So it's less likely to be stored in that subcutaneous pinch and inch fat, more likely to be that firm belly fat. Insulin resistant. So up at a certain point common with obese or severely overweight people, insulin resistance happens, and that vicious cycle of your body thinks it's hungry, even though you've already fed it. And you're eating, and so you eat more to compensate for that feeling of hungry, and you never get enough nutrients because of that insulin sensitivity. The food that you're eating is not going into you. So actually, you're over fat, but you're under fed, your nutrient deficit. And that's the biggest problem with overweight and obesity. Once we hit that trip and that trigger, it's not at all about discipline or willpower. You'll find a lot of overweight people, and you might be one, eat less than people who are smaller of size. And it's the hormones are backfiring in your body, giving the wrong signals and interpreting food as the wrong thing. So when you talk about hormones, is not complete without talking about the sex hormones. So estrogen and progesterone, particular for women. So testosterone is in there too. We need small amounts of that. If we have too much of it, we start seeing signs we don't want to see. For men, the opposite is true. So this is a pretty gender specific talk, but most of us know men. We either gave birth to them, or we have fathers, or we have significant others. So just to share this, if for a man, if testosterone levels are too low, they tend to gain weight. The best way to turn on testosterone for a man is really not through diet, it's through weight training. So strength training is a man's kind of reversal, and it's why diet is less dependent on weight and fat for a man than the type of exercise that they do. But back to us. So it's all about us, estrogen and progesterone. They tend to decrease with age. And certainly as you go through menopause, there's a big drop from where you were at one point in childbearing years. Younger women who have higher in estrogen and progesterone levels tend toward more of an hourglass. Now, you might never have been a real hourglass person. We each have probably one of three main shapes, but you probably tended toward more than you do now, or maybe will if you don't do something about it. Older women, we tend to lose that. As hormone levels decline, there's a bigger effect on the waistline in specific. And then I want to draw your attention toward testosterone we've talked about, but DHEA is just a shortened term for a 50-cent term that's too long to say. But DHEA is also kind of a precursor to the sex hormones. And that's one that right now there's a little more talk about. Maybe we still think it's a little bit elusive. We don't know quite what it is, but it's one of those hormones that can be tested along with your estrogen and progesterone. Your DHA can be tested and look at where are those levels. If they're below what a normal level would be, you can actually take DHEA. You can buy it over the counter, but here's what I would recommend. Make sure you talk to a pharmacist before you buy it, because you don't know that you're getting pharmacy strength DHEA. And you might want to talk to your OBGYN before you do that, just to make sure there are no negative side effects and that this makes sense. And you might need to, judge whether you have a conservative or you have a fairly proactive, on top of it, OBGYN who's willing to have that conversation with you. So if at first you don't get a good conclusive answer, I encourage you to ask someone else. Ask again, get a second opinion. Leptin. So this one is a relatively new kid on the block, if you will. Leptin and ghrelin, which we're not going to dive deep into here today, but leptin and ghrelin both were discovered in the 1990s, about 1995. Leptin, we were all excited about when they first discovered it, thinking this is the key to fat metabolism. And the problem with it, we discovered, is the body can become leptin resistant. The overweight and obese tend to have this commonality. They become leptin resistant. And leptin is something that tells you when you're full. It's kind of your full satisfaction hormone. And if you don't have it, obviously you can keep eating and never really feel full. Between meals, you never really have that I'm satisfied until the next meal, I'm feeling good. If you don't have that, that's problematic. We once thought that leptin supplements would be the answer, but when they realized the problem isn't that your body doesn't provide or promote or create leptin, it's that it doesn't recognize it. It's leptin resistant. No matter how much leptin you take, we won't be able to reverse that. So the key is first to go back probably and look again at cortisol, and look at, once we bring the weight back down, bringing leptin back into a better balance. So similar to bringing the weight down, getting the hormone levels back on track, some people who have had to, from type 2 diabetes, go on insulin can start weaning from it and sometimes come off and control it with their food. I want to talk about growth hormone, but before I do, I alluded to ghrelin, and I'll just mention that to finish that sentence for you. But ghrelin is a relatively new hormone too, and it's the hunger hormone. It's the one that creates that gnawing feeling in your stomach and tells you that you're hungry, maybe when you're really not or shouldn't be, even if you've just eaten and you really don't feel physically have a need for food, but you've got that there, and it's associated a lot with sleep deprivation just after one night. So if you've had a real short night or a lot of disruptions, the next day you may notice that you're more hungry, you eat more, you're craving more, and in part it might be just to keep yourself awake and keep yourself going. But the underlying factor there is actually the hormone ghrelin is working against you, telling you you are hungry. So another reason for the importance of sleep. So moving on to growth hormone. This, if you have any history of bodybuilding or figure building or weightlifting or around the era in the 70s and 80s when that was a bigger deal, this growth hormone was something that bodybuilders talk about frequently. So not suggesting at all that that's where you want to go. You might, but we all need it. If we want to retain our lean muscle tissue, and we do, so that if we lose muscle tissue, the only thing possible is that then we become more fat. Even if we don't gain fat, if we lose our muscle, we are more fat. So over time, going on a diet, losing muscle and fat, gaining back fat, we've become fatter in that cycle, the vicious cycle. With growth hormone, we need it to stimulate protein synthesis, which makes our muscles rebuild, repair, and either maintain or slightly grow. So more muscle at our age is certainly not going to bulk us up. It's the fat on the top of it that makes us bulk, but you have to spend way too many hours, more than most of us have, in order to really reach a place of bulk. We need it for gains in strength and recovery, and strength is going to be more important to us, maybe not today, but in 10 or in 20 or in 30 years, as well as how we look. The vanity part of it is big, but we're going to want that strength for just being able to do the things we want to do, even if that's staying in our own home, being independent of needing someone else. Growth hormone tends to be stimulated under some stress, but not over or in chronic stress. So what we need is the right dose. We need a balance of our cortisol and our growth hormone. We want to stimulate enough growth hormone with exercise and not too much cortisol in order to have the optimal outcome with fat burning and lean muscle maintenance. So that means less duration and hard for exercise and or light for recovery in between. So it's absolutely imminent that you have some recovery days where maybe that's taking the dog for a walk, or it's a light stretching or yoga class. It's a relaxing walk in nature. Those kinds of exercise days are as important as anything else that you might do. So here's the image. Too much or too intense exercise, then we'll have too little of the growth hormone and too much cortisol. So be careful. This is a perfect time of year to be talking about this, because this is the time when we want to launch out of the gate, and I can't wait to start. I can't wait to get started, but we want to go at it too much, too soon, too fast, too hard, because we want the weight off yesterday, don't we? And we want to make sure that we're watching what we eat, but so much that if we eat too little, we also are stressing our bodies. So the total amount of stress, whether it's emotional or it's physical from exercise, or it's physical because our body is not getting enough calories according to what it wants and is used to, that it's taking all of that in as stress. And if you're under too much stress, there's no way that you can lose weight. So it's trying to find the balance. So the question is, for you, for me, for anyone, what first? Where do I start? Do I start addressing how much I'm sleeping? Do I start addressing my diet? And I don't mean a four-letter word by that. I mean your regular daily, I'm going to do this forever habit in diet. Do I start with exercise? Do I start looking at toxic exposure? Which of those is the domino that you need to first push over in order to make that right? So making your list, checking it twice. This is about the checklist that was available to you through the email list. Now, if you came to the webinar just from a friend, you got the link, for instance, and you haven't seen the checklist, I'll send that out with the recording so that you have it. Walk through that. And as you look at my nutrition, look at sleep, look at exercise, there will appear to you places where you have the biggest holes or room for opportunity for growth, where you can change your habits and make the most potential growth. So just a very quick overview. There are 89 bullets on the checklist. So I'm just going to give you some of those peak ones right here. So in terms of exercise, cardiovascular, resistance training, core, and mobility, and those are probably no surprise to you. So yes, we need cardiovascular exercise. We need to elevate your heart rate several times a week. Within that, there are nuances about what you need to be doing. Resistance training twice a week gets you about 80% of the results you're going to get. If you can do the third time a week, wonderful. If that means that puts you over the edge so that you would say, I can't do 3 times, I don't have that kind of time, just do 2. 2 is plenty. And when I say 2, we can build a program around anything. So if you have very little time and time is your biggest excuse and you know it, you can do a full body routine and get a lot of benefits out of 10 minutes 2 different times a week. And if that's all you can fit in, that is 100% better than last week if you did none. So start there. What I think you'll do, and what I think that we as a fitness industry need to or want to do, is we want to make you codependent. We think that if you get started with 10 minutes, that you will love the benefits so much and the way that you feel so much that you will begin to feel, well, 15 isn't that bad, I have time, or 20 isn't that bad. Because what's motivating is once you start to feel and see results, we tend to make time for the things that are important to us. And if you start feeling better because of what you're doing, you may fit it in. If you never do, you still are going to benefit from that 10 minutes. So don't let time stop you. We can build around anything. So rather than more exercise, the other answer here is that we need to just do smarter exercise. It's not more, but it's more of the right kind, probably in fewer minutes than you're used to. And the place to start with time is not from somebody like the American College of Sports Medicine, who says you need to exercise X amount of minutes a week. The best place to start is what you'll do. Do you have 10 minutes every day? Do you have 20 minutes every day? Then let's build the program around that and around what you can and are willing to do, what's realistic for you. That's the smarter place to start, because if what you've done before is tried to imply or impose somebody else's structure and it hasn't worked and you're here, the better option is to choose what's going to work for me and know what the answer to that question is. And it's not necessarily more intense exercise. There's a lot to be said about high intensity intervals, getting more done, more calorie burning, more fat burning, not during, but after the exercise. But there's a point where you have to like exercising in order to be willing to repeat it. And if you absolutely hate the high intensity exercise, or you absolutely dislike sweating that is likely to come with high intensity exercise, that is probably not the lifelong choice that you're going to make that will keep you at it. You've got to start with something you enjoy. And very rarely, when we've started exercise or diet before in our lives, have we participated in things that we liked just for the joy of doing them. And what a better way to start than thinking about all the things you can't eat or what you have to do for exercise today. So think about that change of heart. So with cardiovascular exercise, here's the details. Enough of the right kind reduces weight, builds and tones your muscles, reduces your body fat, eliminates and reduces cellulite. Too much of the right kind, even, and too much of the wrong kind, cause storage of fat. They cause adrenal fatigue, which means more fat instead of more fit. What we've done in the past often backfires. So if you're even tempted to jump into a 6-day-a-week program, and last month you were on the couch, that's trouble in River City, friends. So the question is, what's right? What's the right amount of exercise for you? So with cardio, there are really three types of cardiovascular exercise you want in your plan, even as a beginner or just starting out or starting again. It counts too. Long and slow. And what is long for you? I don't know the answer to that. For a lot of people I've worked with, I will share with you that long when they're starting might be 45 minutes. That might be a long time. Or if they're not exercising at all, 35 minutes in one stretch of a walk might be a long time. Interval training could be shorter duration, so about 20 minutes is all you need. And that might be a good warm up for 5 minutes, going a minute either uphill or faster, and a minute recovery. And doing that for 10 minutes and then cooling down for 5. That's an illustration of interval training. And a moderate tempo is just going a little bit harder but steadier for maybe a 25-minute time period. So it's something in the middle, but if you get the sense here, you're using 3 different gears, and we have 3 different energy systems. So if high intensity intervals are good, doing them every day is not better. Many of the experts at 2 recent conferences agreed on this year, just within the last 2 months, in fact, that high intensity interval training is appropriate about 1 day a week. And if you can do it more days a week, you're probably really not doing high intensity intervals. So 1 day a week is good because of the tear down and the breakdown, and it's harder on your system. And too much of that over time, all of those days add up to more cortisol, which is more fat storage, right? It's more stress on your body. So it's a little bit of each is good. Make it look like a potluck and not like all of one thing all the time. So long and slow every single day, also not good. The variety is what's ideal. In resistance training, what's ideal? It's absolutely necessary. After the age of 50, we're losing muscle at such a faster rate. We're losing it at, and I take that back, I don't want to confuse you. We're losing it at a rate of about 8 to 10% of our total muscle mass every decade. So after the age of 50, it's just that the cumulative effect of from losing it from the age of 25 to 35 to that decade to 45 to 55, now we've had 3 decades of loss. We were losing it all that time, but now it's really become noticeable. And because we're having this ability, this wonderful new ability to store fat better, it's more noticeable that we're losing that muscle. So it's more apparent. So we do need heavy weights because lifting heavier causes a better muscle metabolism response. Your metabolism is elevated higher and for longer than if you lift light weights. And so it depends. If you have arthritis or you have a chronic condition like fibromyalgia, you may not be able to lift heavy, and you have to do what you can do within your means, but find your best heavy and safest, and that would be ideal. And we also need light because we need to be able to move fast and quickly and have agility. Those both need to be worked into every kind of session we have. And yes, we need to mix them and do functional and traditional kinds of exercises within every exercise session. All of those things said, we can do each of those and get a great strength training workout still in 10 minutes, 15, 20, whatever you've got, we can build around it. Core exercises, I have to point this out because this is always a go-to. This is one of the albatrosses around my neck, if you will, seeing advertisements or Facebook posts that say the best core exercises for belly fat. Whenever you see that, this is a lie. No core exercise works on belly fat. For working on belly fat, you really need to target, first of all, a good diet. You need a good nutrition plan, but then you need cardiovascular exercise and resistance training. You can't spot reduce or start burning your belly fat right there between your rib cage and your hips. It just doesn't happen. You can tone the muscles underneath the fat, but the fat will still be there. If you're spending too much time working on core, lying on the floor, you're wasting time that you could be doing cardio or strength training, which would have a much bigger effect on what you're doing. When you talk to elite athletes, I am here in Boulder, Colorado, and I daily swim next to the world champion triathletes. They rarely do core training when they're in season because running, biking, and swimming do far more for your core than lying on the floor and doing core exercise. So keep that in mind. Sleep, it's back to basics. This is simple. We need more sleep. That's about all that needs to be said. There is an anatomy of how do you get the most sleep? What do you need to do? What kinds of things can set up the triggers and the habits that you need to develop? But when it comes down to it, the average need is about 7 to 9 hours. We need that for optimal health. There have been a lot of studies that have shown some people, and women in particular, seem to need more. Many of us need 9 or we need 10, and we're just not getting it. So if you're one of those anomalies who doesn't need much sleep, who tries and feels fully rested after 6 hours, don't let someone tell you you need more necessarily if everything is working well, but look to sleep if you're having trouble and everything else you're doing seems to be on the right page. Stress, remember that it all counts. So if you're emotionally stressed about something, a relationship, a hardship, something you wanted to happen that didn't, or something that did happen you didn't want to happen, something at work, a promotion you want, you dislike your job, you've got extra projects on your plate, you've got a quota you can't hit, you have stress of wanting to exercise, guilt over feeling you don't have time to exercise, or you're trying to exercise too intensely, too fast, you're dieting, trying to cut back because you don't have time for the rest and everything else is out of control. All of that stress acts on your cortisol. It's not just about diet and exercise. It never was, but now we know how much more. It's calories in, calories out. It's also hormones. It all counts. So hormone hello. So it's taking this, we want to take this trip from hormone hell to hormone heal. That's the goal. So looking at the stress levels through the sleep, through the right kind of exercise and nutrition, you may need to strip down and do less, come back into balance and get your energy back before you build back up. And I'll share something with you just personally. I recently wrote for my customers and group actually who's starting in this 7-week program in January, a 14-day double your energy, not a diet, actually called the undiet on purpose. Just about getting back, major nutrients back into your diet, making sure that we're blending a lot of things, either blending some soups, blending smoothies, because we've already started then to break down the enzymes. You get more nutrients from that. So that's one part of it. It's backing way off of exercise so that you're doing exercise on a regular basis, but maybe 20 to 30 minutes at most, and keeping the intensity either high for a very, very short time or very moderate for long walks. And that's it. And then looking at decreasing toxic exposure, trying to get away from your computer screen. It's a 14-day plan. I did it for the month of December, and I love exercise, so that was really cutting back for me. And I think I eat well normally. It wasn't a big change for me, although I stayed away from chocolate for a long time. That was hard, just to eliminate sugar. And I feel amazing. January 1st, I felt my energy was back, and I didn't realize how low it was. I just didn't feel, I felt flat during exercise. That was it. Nothing bad. I wasn't sick. I wasn't ill. But sometimes you need to pull back to be able to go forward. And so an example of someone who really does like exercise, who really does regularly eat well, it can happen to any of us. The emotional stress, changes in your life, all of that adds up. Rest and recovery, I'll say just a real short word about. A lot of times when we think about our exercise program, unless you've gone through something like a 5K training program or a marathon training program, not suggesting that you need to, you haven't possibly trained like an athlete, meaning that you haven't had hard days and then taken rest days or had recovery days. We often think we need to keep working and I need to work harder. I don't need to let off if I need to lose weight. And the opposite is true. The body actually gains strength, gets stronger, and makes progress on our rest days, not on our work days. So if we don't strategize those recovery days, and the ultimate recovery is sleep. But down days, if I go hard today, I go easy tomorrow, or I take a day off tomorrow, or I only walk the dog tomorrow. And our bodies also need recovery and rest from dieting. And that was one of my colleagues said that. And I thought, how eloquent is that? Because dieting is stressful for your body. So if you can get off of a diet, it's always got an off ramp anyway. And then we somehow think if we've been on a diet and we've lost weight, or we go to boot camp and then we stop and we can't wait till it's over, then we somehow think things will work out for us if we stop what we're doing that helped us lose weight. And that couldn't be further from the truth, and most of us know that firsthand. So it's finding a permanent, what can I do forever plan? And that is the seventh step, the holistic approach. So notice the difference of holistic and holistic. They're both prominent words right now, but it's the top word, holistic. It's whole body. Everything that's happening in your whole life affects whether or not you can lose weight and maintain that loss. We can't segment. Your mind and your body and your spirit are all going to work either together, or if those are fighting in any way, one of them will win, and the stronger energy always does. And unfortunately, it's probably on the stress side of things and not toward the side that you really are able to control. So it's factoring in what else is going on for me today. This is my exercise session or my class or the workout I was supposed to do. But here's the sleep I got last night. Here's the stress I had at work today. And you need to be able to work with that to do a plan B. This isn't the one I need today. I actually need plan B, and that will get me further ahead than doing the hard workout I had planned anyway. So hopefully that was helpful and insightful to you, and it took a little bit of stress off your shoulders, because what we've always done, I think, has been told we need more discipline, we need more willpower, you need more motivation, you just have to stick with it. And sometimes I think intuitively we know this program, this is not working for me, but we just don't quite know why. Hopefully you've got now some insight. So as a webinar attendee, the regular rate for the 7-week program we have starting Wednesday, January 7th is regularly $6.99. And today only for you for attending, or if you're listening to the recording, those of you who had football today, it's $4.99. So I've changed that. You'll see the last chance webinar attendee rate if you go to the website address that you see on the screen. And if anyone has a question right now, so in your next couple of minutes, if you want to ask one and just type it in, I will take a good look at what that is and respond to it. So here's what's included. If you're thinking about it, the 7-week program, it's a weekly private group calls. You'll have the opportunity to be live in the hot seat, either anonymously or live and verbally on the line. So I am reviewing on a week-by-week basis your exercise, your diet, nutrition, and sleep logs. And what I'll do is every week pull out something based on collectively the group so that there's a great learning opportunity by looking at here's what this is happening this week. Here's how I would change that for a more optimal opportunity for fat loss, for weight loss, for looking at lowering stress levels and cortisol levels between so that you feel better, number one, and number two, are going to get more progress and have better results. So you'll have that opportunity, and one-on-one, you're going to turn in your nutrition, activity, and sleep logs. I'm going to comment back personally for each and every one of you. As far as nutrition, when we hit that week, you're going to learn how to cut the crap, eat to your heart's content. This isn't a diet. It's something that will point out to you the pros and the cons of the last 30 or more years of adult life, what you might have learned and the relationship that you might have gained with certain foods that we need to change and tweak so that you're eating correctly and you know what it is. So some of us think we're eating good or we're eating right, and we may be eating too little or too much of the right or wrong thing. We're going to talk about exercise during the second week or third week, looking at smarter and not more, much more specifically and in depth than we have today, and with each of you where you're starting. We'll talk about this stress connection and what you can do about it. And I have some great guest presentations to pull in pieces about music therapy, about laughter, and about nature in particular. And there are numerous other opportunities for you there. When we get to the sleep week, we're going to talk about the anatomy of a skinny bitch's sleep and what that looks like, the difference between people who gain or maintain and can't lose weight and those who actually are at their more optimal weight, and the difference between sleep habits and those people. When we talk about rest and recovery, I'll actually give you a much more specific week-by-week breakdown of what your Monday through Sunday workouts would look like if you were approaching it like an athlete. So you've got a better idea of what day do I put, and how today's workout is affected by what did I do yesterday and what am I doing tomorrow. And you'll have a much better idea of how you can sandwich that and put that together for yourself. In the hormone hell to hormone healing, the After 50 Must will address many of those we talked about today and then go a little bit deeper into some of those that we did not hit on quite as much. The holistic planning talks about breaking down case studies one by one. And we'll take some significant people right from the group and look at what they're doing, how they can change it, and show you the differences between the ideal program for one person and the ideal program for another. And this will bring you back to the reason why a boot camp for many, where you've got 25 and 30 or 100 people packed into one boot camp, doesn't work when the same exercises, the same routine are all given to a mass of people with expectations of a lot of results that are only going to work for a certain percentage of people in there. And then in addition to the 7-week program, the calls and the one-on-one interaction with me, we'll have a private Facebook group where you can interact. So 24/7, you can post something and you can get some feedback from participants in the class as well as from me. So if I'm online and you post something, I will respond. You can count on that. Then you have this optionally if you'd like to contact me. And this is whether you think you're going to do the coaching program or not. But if you're interested, you're on the fence, and you're not sure, you have the option of doing a 15-minute call with me just to talk about what's going on with you. What have you tried in the past, and why did you start it? What initially drew you, but what didn't work and what stopped working for you, so then maybe I can give you a little help in the right direction. My goal, my New Year's resolution, if you will, in 2015 is to increase the number of people that I touch to 5,000 this year. And that's just a little bit higher than last year. The only way I can do that is to reach out to people like you in groups like today and expand the coaching that I'm able to do. So we need to clarify and we need to get rid of some of the confusion that's out there with diet and with nutrition and what we need to be doing elsewhere in our lives to help balance it. And that's my mission. So there's my contact information. I hope you'll reach out to me there. I will, just in a little bit this afternoon, send out a recording. So if you're on the call, you'll have that to refer to as well. You're welcome to share it if you'd like to. The bonus for today, the rate is only good for till the end of today. So if you want to take advantage of it, please do that. I'll insert the clip in your email as well. Thank you so much for being here. I don't have any questions appearing here or on my text right now. One here I'm responding to personally on a text. So if you have a question and you want to put it in the box, please do. If you're on an iPad, you may be saying, what box are you talking about? So if you want to text me, again, that number is 515-290-6188. Feel free to use that, and I'll stick on just for 1 or 2 more minutes. And otherwise, thanks so much for being here. Happy New Year, and best of luck with your programming this 2015. This is your year.